we've been talking a little bit about inspectors. Those 11 inspectors were designated in reaction to the January 5th incident, correct?
They were part of the holistic response to the January 5th.
So it was essentially reactive.
Yes.
Those 11 inspectors are for the Renton plant, or are there others for other plants?
So by end of year, we'll have 13 in Renton, in Everett, and in Charleston each.
Now, Renton is 1.1 million square feet with 12,000 employees. Those 11 inspectors are just a token force, correct?
They're not there to run the quality system. They're there to oversee the quality system. So they're able to, that number of inspectors allows them to go to each station. So there are, I think, a dozen stations in the build process, and talk to the employees that are working on those.
So they don't actually do the kind of hands-on quality control. You're still depending on Boeing employees to look at the parts, to review the assembly, to watch what's going on. We continue to have the delegation of that authority to Boeing employees, correct?
It's not a delegation of authority. The manufacturer is responsible for the quality assurance system and the quality management system. The inspectors are there to make sure they have a robust quality management system and it's functioning, and the KPIs that we look at every week are telling us whether that's working or not working.
So they are not really responsible for the quality inspections, the actual hands-on.
The actual inspections are done by the Boeing quality inspectors, and for the 737 MAX, there are close to 1,600 inspection points that happen during construction, and that's done by Boeing employees, and we provide oversight into that process.
Hence, there is validity to the claims of whistleblowers who come to us and say, you know, mechanics are looking at the guy next to them as quality control. That's the quality control, or reviewing their own work.
Well, certainly for key inspections, they always get two sets of eyes. So that for matters around fit and finish, form and function, those always have two sets of eyes. There are some inspections that are done by the people that complete the work, but not the crucial inspections.
This ODA, or inspection, and the system has been controversial for some time, as you know. And I think that the 13 inspectors who will be there by the end of the year are inadequate to the task of really assuring the public that there is quality control by an objective and independent entity. That's just a fact of life. If it's Boeing employees looking at their own colleagues' work, it's very different from an FAA quality inspection. And I think that number, as I think you have acknowledged, is not sufficient to cover that kind of quality control. Let me just go into the January 5th incident. After that door plug blew out, you said, quote, the FAA should have had much better visibility into what was happening at Boeing before January 5th. One of the FAA officials interviewed by the NTSB as part of its investigation of the January incident said that FAA's relationship with Boeing was positive. One said it was, quote, excellent. Another said it was, quote, open, honest, transparent, and timely. Are you satisfied that the relationship with Boeing now is open, honest, transparent, and timely?
I don't rely on the relationship being any of those things. It's more of a verification approach, which is why we have the inspectors on the ground and why we have the key performance metrics that we can measure going forward. These are very objective outcomes of the production process and give us a very clear picture of the health of that system. But to your earlier point, the system was too reactive, and I think overall with the oversight system that we've had, it's been too static and not dynamic enough to adjust to circumstances that change. So it may stay in place until it doesn't work anymore, and that's not the right approach. It needs to change as circumstances change. So we're revisiting that approach, not just for the overseeing manufacturers, but all aspects of the national airspace.
I think you testified that you foresee changes in Boeing, and especially in its safety culture, coming at some point, perhaps years from now. Doesn't it have to be like weeks from now? Isn't there an urgency here?
Well,
isn't this company seriously in jeopardy?
I think that change management with a company with 170,000 employees takes a long time. So the comprehensive plan has a lot of front loading on things that can be done quickly, like the tool and parts tracking technology that's most manufacturers would have had already. They bring that up to our current standards.
But just to interrupt, and I apologize, Boeing has been promising these changes for a long time, right? I mean, yes, cultural change does take time, but Boeing, going back years now, would have been criminally charged, except it promised change. And it was spared that prosecution on that promise. It broke the promise. And now it's being criminally prosecuted. Why hasn't the FAA said, you were on probation in effect, you have to do it now?
So I think we effectively have by capping production. So they cannot grow to where they need to grow without having these 6 metrics in the green, stable, and a plan to grow safely. And I think that's the big difference between now and previous efforts. If they don't do that, they don't grow. And if they don't grow, they're not going to be able to achieve profitability. So I think we do have the right strictures in place to make this happen. I think it would be not possible to have company-wide culture change in a matter of months. I think it's going to take years. I think those employees that you surveyed, a lot of them aren't going to believe it until they've seen it for years. They need to hear it from their leaders. They need to hear it from the vice presidents. They need to hear it from the mid-level managements, and they need to hear it for years. So we know that takes a long time. But there are a lot of aspects of this that have been rolled out and are being rolled out. Safety management is also another thing that should not take as long as is indicated, 2027, and we are going to work to try to accelerate that as one of the conditions of this plan. But it takes a long time to get that. That's part of the culture of safety, and it takes a long time to change that safety.
Well, my time has expired. On this round, I'd like to pursue some of these questions. I respect that you sought to answer them, and I'll follow them. But let me just say, I'm not a business school graduate or a business CEO, but this company has had a lot of time to achieve change, a lot of time. And the ranking member is partly correct that maybe perfection can't be achieved, but it has to be the goal when you put an airplane up in the air. We ought to have zero tolerance for risk to the extent we can eliminate it. In other words, needless risk when you manufacture an airplane is reckless. Maybe not when you make a pen. There is a margin of error when you make a pen. If it doesn't work, I'll get another one. If the airplane isn't working up in the air, people die, and people have died. And so I'm going to yield to the ranking member